Crystia!
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Fringe. We have to talk about the Team Canada approach, and with tariffs on the looming within the next few days, a possibility of tariffs hitting Canada, it's important to talk about what's going to happen. First, before we get into that, I must apologize. I'm still under the weather, still have a flu, so I'm very sorry for my raspy voice or mannerisms. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, if you're enjoying the content, please make sure to hit the subscribe button. Leave a thumbs up and a comment on the way out. It helps more than you know. With that being said, let's get into today's story. I'm not going to beat around the bush. Danielle Smith, this article came out of the Toronto Star, which is funny for them. But there's an opinion coming around that Danielle Smith might get Trump's tariff exemption on oil and gas. The reason I wanted to cover this is while I believe this is not likely, wouldn't it be the ultimate slap in the face to Justin Trudeau and the federal parties and all of the premiers who have taken this Team Canada approach if Donald Trump said, I'm putting tariffs on everything except Alberta's oil and gas because Danielle Smith actually knows how to talk with people and negotiate? I mean, Trump's request was that we fix our border. We stop migrants and we stop illegal substances from being manufactured and coming into our country and being dispersed amongst the country. Not one single premier, aside from Danielle Smith, have I heard about talking about actually securing the border. Ever since this was mentioned, it's always been, well, we're prepared to retaliate. We're going to go back to Donald Trump and we're going to fight these tariffs. There's been no mention of securing the border. That should tell you all you need to know about our current political system. It doesn't matter where you stand on the side of tariffs or if you believe that it's, best to go against Donald Trump. If you support the current political landscape at this point, if you support the current structure of our Canadian politics, in my view, you're just as corrupt as those who are running it these days. But I want to get into this article because there's a lot to discuss here. There's a lot to unpack as to what is coming forward possibly in the next 2 days, the next 48 hours for Canadians. Danielle Smith has distinguished herself by getting it alone. No Team Canada for her. She's opted out of the Premier's Club to pursue her own agenda, getting a tariff exemption for Alberta's oil imports to the U.S. But is she really going it alone? Not at all. She's accompanied by Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, which represents the big producers of Alberta oil, most of whom come from the oil sands. Its agenda is almost identical to Smith's when it comes to the business of U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs being slapped on Canadian goods going into the U.S. Again, they all realize the importance of us remaining trading partners, trying to negotiate a deal, which Donald loves, by the way, rather than going to war with him in an economic warfare. Smith has said she wants to expand Canada's pipelines so our oil can be shipped overseas and we aren't so dependent on the U.S. She wants less regulation, such as emissions caps, Environmental Assessment Act, and the pause on liquid natural gas export facilities. She wants to double oil production. Don't blame her. All of this fits nicely with the goals of CAPP, as expressed by Lisa Baton, CLAPS CEO, in a speech in Washington, D.C. on the U.S. Election Day. All that's missing is the ties between CAPP and the American Petroleum Institute. It now has tremendous power in the U.S., given that Trump has promised to open up land and seas with his drill baby drill motif. It's clear that the oil and gas industry, for whom Smith was once a lobbyist, gets whatever it wants, and that she will go to any lengths to get it from them. I mean, that's a bit of an understatement. She's invested in Albertans. The big problem here, and I've talked about this on live streams, is what's to stop Donald Trump from getting on the phone with all of these oil and gas companies and saying, look, you're going to get a far better deal if you pack up, if you come down to the United States. I can't even do my very bad Trump impression with this flu. But what's to stop him from bringing those companies down by saying, look, you're going to have more profits, you're going to be taxed less, we're going to drill. You can still maintain your business with Canada, but you're going to find far better profits in the United States. It's going to cripple Alberta's job industry, as well as Canada's, by the way. We're still a part of the country. It says that's why she didn't join the other premiers in their Team Canada approach to President Trump's bullying. That's why she's been crisscrossing the U.S., even dropping in on Mar-a-Lago in hopes of getting an exemption for Alberta oil from Trump's tariff threat. Again, if that was the case, I mean, this is a little bit of an angry article, but if that was the case, why wouldn't she? The rest of the country has no functioning government. Our government went down there and told Donald Trump that if you don't keep subsidizing us, if you don't buy our cars, we're done. We're finished. We're weak. Danielle Smith is acting within the best interest of her province to say, look, I'm not going to let my province go down. We're at least going to go down swinging. It says, granted, oil and gas are important to Alberta's and Canada's economy, but wouldn't it have been better to join up with Team Canada and hold your trump card in abeyance until the hard bargaining begins? If you know how to have a trump card, why waste it seeking appeasement from the king of cruelty? I'm not going to go further into the article, but it shows that there's a little bit of disdain coming out of the Toronto Star for Danielle Smith trying to act within the best interest of Albertans. What's funny is the 51st state proposal continues to grow steam. There are, throughout polls that I've seen online, a very high number of Canadians still entertaining the idea of a 51st state. Marty up north tweeting out, this is an interesting idea. Somebody's put this sketch together. You need to change this to Alberta, first of all. But it's saying that this portion of Canada, which somebody has cut out the lower mainland of British Columbia on another drawing, but essentially Alaska, we'll call this Alberta because I'm not calling it Saskatchewan. It extends British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and most of Ontario. The Ontario that doesn't want the federal government anyways. Down here, you have Ontario, right, which is basically Toronto, Ottawa, etc. You've got Quebec being their own country. And then the rest of Canada, which is Newfoundland, Labrador, New Brunswick, all gets absorbed into Maine, the state of Maine. I mean, as Marty says, it is an interesting idea if it were to happen. You just let Canada be this little portion down here, Ontario. They can have whatever they want. I think this is them actually dividing it up into states because you see 51, 52, 53. But I think if Canada wanted to remain Canada at this point, wouldn't this be the best landscape? Give the federal government their little patch of Ontario, and Quebec can decide if they want to stay or if they want to be their own country. We can remain prosperous and become the 51st state. I think that's reasonable. The only idea of the 51st state that bothers me here is the idea that it would stretch this far. I mean, when you compare it to the rest of the states in the United States, this is a massive state. You'd have to divide it up. You'd have to find ways of redrawing those lines. I don't know. Look, we're talking in the realm of fantasy here. I don't see it happening. But what's funny is that when you're going to war with Donald Trump, he's a businessman. He knows what he's going up against. He already knows our numbers. This is why he asked Justin Trudeau, what would happen if we stopped giving you $250 billion in support? You've got knuckleheads like Doug Ford, who are still championing dollar-for-dollar tariffs, pulling liquor off the shelves and only selling Canadian products. Well, that's going to help Canadians, isn't it? You think about all the products that come from the United States that Canadians consume. Listen to what this jackass says. Let's go.
Since we're at the border, is this more or less a referendum on who's the strongest leader to be able to deal with tariffs, Trump, whoever, whatever's coming at you from the U.S.?
It's twofold here. Is leadership, and leadership, and who do you trust to take care of the people of Ontario and the businesses and the workers when times get tough? And they're going to get tough. Do you trust the other parties that all they believe is tax and spend? Or do you believe in the PC party that's going to support you? We're going to put tens of billions of dollars into the economy, just like we did during the pandemic. There's experience on one side with the PC party and zero experience with the other three parties. I'll tell you who I'm betting on. I'm betting on the PC party.
We're going to put tens of billions of dollars into the economy, just like we did during the pandemic. How'd that work out for everybody? Am I the only one who said that didn't benefit anyone? The money that was printed, the money that went in. It's part of the reason we're in this crisis that we're in already. Keep in mind, if we go into a tariff war with Donald Trump, we're at a time where inflation's at an all-time high. Interest rates are still high. The money that we've printed during the pandemic has devalued our Canadian dollar. A tariff war at this point is only going to worsen the state of the Canadian dollar. It's going to make things very difficult for us, and it leads me into the discussion of what comes next. And one thing that I'm very disappointed about, we've talked about this on last night's live stream. I apologize, I'm touching my face. I get it. I got to keep the video going, folks. Pierre Poilievre, once supporting Danielle Smith, is now kind of in a 50-50 stance. Now, I'm not criticizing Pierre, but it's a little disappointing to see this, because it really makes me question what we're getting into with the next government. As Pierre says, he'd hit the U.S. hard with dollar-for-dollar tariffs if elected. There's no negotiating. Now, hold on there. I know people are going to say, well, he's not doing it on everything. It's strategic. We're going to get into all of that. What I have a problem with is that he's talked about continuing to fund Ukraine. He's continuing to put money out. But he also wants to fight dollar for dollar with Donald Trump. I don't see how that's possible. I thought Pierre wanted to negotiate. Now, he partially does. Let's get into the article. I'll stop beating around the bush. We'll put some context on this. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre confirmed that if elected, he would be looking to pinpoint strategic trade areas with the U.S. to target retaliatory tariffs, even going as far as matching them dollar for dollar. So it says he's looking to pinpoint strategic trade areas with the U.S. So he's not doing it on everything like Donald Trump. It's not a straight across the board. It's strategic, apparently. Conservative leader said he would pitch to the U.S. President Donald Trump that America can only win with open and unbridled free trade with Canada. So again, he is willing to negotiate to an extent. But what Pierre's doing here is playing a little bit of hardball. Now, do I think Pierre has the negotiation skills to handle Donald Trump? Absolutely. I think that Pierre has the tools necessary to attempt to negotiate with a businessman like Donald Trump. The problem is, if you're not backing the kind of policy that Danielle Smith is putting forward, if you're not pushing that, hey, we're a large trading partner, we got to work together. If you're going to match tariffs, it's only going to ensue a larger pushback from Donald Trump. He doesn't like losing. He has more in his arsenal than we do. I don't think it's going to bode well. Poilievre told CTV News Atlantic's Todd Bates that he wouldn't hesitate to slap retaliatory tariffs on as many U.S. goods as necessary in an interview that addressed his stance. I would retaliate. That's the key word, is retaliation. I would retaliate. I would target products and services that A, we don't need, understandable. B, that we can make ourselves, again, understandable, that's better for our markets. And C, that we can buy elsewhere so that we can maximize the impact on Americans while minimizing the impact on Canadians. What you have to realize throughout this entire trade war is that it's not about impact. Americans are going to hurt Canadian jobs. Canadians are going to hurt American jobs. This is why we need to negotiate at the table and not start an economic trade war. We need to look at our people and say what's best for them, not a dick measuring contest with governments. Poilievre pledged to implement an emergency bring-it-home tax cut on work investment, making stuff in Canada, energy, home building, so that we can stimulate more economic growth here. This is what I wanted to highlight. Another slogan. This is what has me concerned and honestly a little disappointed. I want to hear an actual plan, not an emergency bring-it-home tax cut. This is what you're going to hear over and over again now. Orange man bad. He also said that he would break down barriers faced by interprovincial trade so that Canada could become more self-reliant. Again, I agree with that. We need to build our own refineries. We need things like Energy East. We need to become an economic powerhouse. If Canada were to put together its manufacturing, its agriculture, its oil and gas industries, we could be a larger economic powerhouse than the United States. The problem is that we're governed by woke morons that don't want to utilize what Canada has to offer because their friends line their pockets better for keeping it secured, for get locked up in a Pandora's box. We have freer trade today with the Americans than we do with ourselves, said Poilievre. I agree with that. We have to knock down those barriers and build more liquid natural gas pipelines and facilities to enable great global export. Again, he nails it on the head. So again, I'm not crapping on Pierre, just a little disappointed on the stance. When asked if he would take a dollar-for-dollar approach regarding retaliatory measures, he confirmed that he would. It has to hit hard, said Poilievre, stressing the importance of being very surgical about what products to place tariffs on. Trump announced that his proposed 25% tariffs on all Canadian imports could take effect as early as February 1st. Poilievre noted that Canada's economy has long been basking in the glow of the massive economic superpower and strong military of the U.S., but that the time has come to stop relying so heavily on our neighbors south. So again, he's addressing the issues where Donald Trump has said we pay the least when it comes to funding military. Pierre agrees with that. Again, I have to say, like, this isn't really criticism of Poilievre, but more a 50-50 approach that I find disappointing. That when you have to take into consideration the words that are used here. When you talk about retaliation, all it's going to do to a guy like Donald Trump, while I agree with what Pierre is saying, but you have to look at the large scale. A guy like Trump, when he hears the word retaliate, well, he's not going to get pushed into a corner. Has anybody ever seen Trump pushed into a corner? They don't call it the Trump effect for nothing. We need to be more strategic. We need, now, while I guess I'll wait to see what Pierre has, what arsenal he brings out. The best thing I think Donald Trump could do at this point, if Trump really wants results in Canada, because let's be honest, the only reason that Trudeau has agreed to step down once a new leader is chosen is because Donald Trump pushed his effect into Canada. He started talking about tariffs. It was the final nail in the coffin for Trudeau. There's no hiding around this. What Trump should be doing right now is say, I'll put a 75% tariff on Canada unless they call an election. That would be smart, because then we'd have no choice but to go to the polls. People would riot in the streets. I mean, things would get crazy. Now, I don't want to give anybody any ideas here, but I'm just saying I think it would be more beneficial if we were to call an election rather than trying to find ways to battle Donald Trump. Because keep in mind, it's not Poilievre who's going to the negotiation plates with Donald Trump between now and October. It's Melanie Joly. It's Dominic LeBlanc. It's liberals. It's possibly Mark Carney at some point going to bat with Donald Trump. And all they're going to do is push back. All they're going to do is make a bad situation worse. At least that's my opinion. Let me know what you guys think down below. Do you think Danielle Smith is going to get an exemption on oil and gas? I personally don't think so. Do you think an election is what's needed? Do you agree with Pierre's statement? Give me all of those answers down below in the comments. Leave a thumbs up on the way out if it's your first time here. I hope this video has earned your subscription. Make sure to hit that button again. Join our large Fringe majority as we're growing at an alarming rate here on the channel. Join me live here on the channel every Friday night for Friday Night Fringe, our live streaming show, where I'm joined by my beautiful wife, Mrs. Fringe, as we sit down and talk about everything that happened this week in politics, everything coming up in the week ahead that we're aware of, and some back and forth within our most amazing community on the platform. We enjoy listening to what you guys have to say outside of making these videos, and we enjoy hearing what you have to say this Friday, starting at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, here on the channel. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video and have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.